Hey guys, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Megan Hardy, and I'm the founder of Fitness Uncharted, which is a women's health and fitness coaching company designed to help you build muscle, lose body fat, improve your metabolism, and feel really freaking confident. And today I am here with a very special guest, Miss Shannon Salge. She is a functional nutrition and metabolism specialist who addresses women's chronic health conditions and weight loss resistance. And Shannon actually joined us on episode 45 to talk about hormone imbalances and how to naturally optimize metabolism. So if you guys missed that episode, definitely go back and give that a listen. That has been a very popular one. And today she's back to talk to us about cycle syncing, workouts, and nutrition with the phases of your menstrual cycle. So this will be one that I think will be very interesting for the ladies. So Shannon, welcome back to the show.
Yes, hello. It's always good to talk to you. You are such a light. Um, I
Thank
had such a
you.
good time talking last time. It is a good episode to kind of go back, but I wanted to talk on this topic because it's just not talked about enough, right? People are always like, oh, let's balance our hormones. I might have a hormone imbalance, and we don't actually know what that means or what our cycle actually looks like. And when you talk about balancing hormones, I think it's important that we as women do not function the same as men. And this is so
Yes.
important to understand because women are on this, 28-day cycle, not a 24-hour cycle like men, and our body works different. And so often, I think you probably understand this too, when clients come in, they'll get really frustrated during different times. Sometimes they're on this real big high. They're feeling amazing. And they're like, life is great. And then they're suddenly not hitting PRs anymore. And suddenly they're bloated. And suddenly they're like, why do I crave sugar all the time? And then they get mad at themselves.
Yes.
Something's wrong. It's like, nope, actually, this is all pretty normal. you know, and even being high performing women, there's actually different times in your cycle to actually even work on projects and work on, um, things in the house, based off of where you're at, which is really fascinating, right? I won't get into that too much.
Yes. Well, I mean,
But
I can even speak personally, like where it's like I think if you know if you're aware of your cycle and those ups and downs, like it doesn't feel like so much of a roller coaster because you know it's coming and you know what to expect. Like especially as a high performing woman who's like if you get frustrated with your low phases, it's like, oh no, like I know that's where I'm at right now in the month.
100%, because yeah, the more you know, the more you have more understanding and less frustrated. Because let's be real, that frustration ain't going to take you anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so, optimizing your nutrition, your workouts, um, your mindset during these different phases is really important. And I will say that this talk is really more for a menstruating woman, right? If you are on birth control, it is a little different. Birth control is pretty much going to blunt a lot of these spikes and drops. Okay. And obviously if you don't have a period, you're not going to have these as well. So just want to preface this. It's still beneficial to you still, all this information is still helpful. But I think just starting off on like what the hell an actual menstrual cycle is really important,
Yeah.
because what women don't understand is you actually have these 4 phases of your cycle, right? You have where you're obviously menstruating, right? And this is, I'm going to say typical here. Like, guys, if you're a little bit different, don't stress too much about this. But about 3 to 7 days is a normal cycle where you're menstruating. Then you have this follicular phase, which is the beginning part of your cycle. Then you have an ovulation phase, and you have a luteal phase. And why this is important is your hormones respond differently during this time. So at the beginning, when you're menstruating, like, your hormones are a little bit lower. Once you start getting into this follicular phase, your estrogen starts to rise. Same with your testosterone. Then your ovulation peaks. I'm going to explain why this is important, guys, but I just want to set the scene. It peaks, with your testosterone and your estrogen around ovulation. Then your estrogen is going to drop it towards the end of your phase, and your progesterone is going to rise. Then it kind of tanks going into menstruation. Why is this important? All of these spikes and drops change how you feel. When you have higher progesterone, you're going to have a little bit more calming effect. You're going to feel probably a little more tired. When you have more estrogen and testosterone, you're going to feel more energized. You're going to feel like you want to kill it. You're going to probably be hornier. Like, all of these are, should be happening, right? They're not. That's another topic.
Yeah.
But this matters on how we train and how we eat. And so I'll start with training because this is a huge thing you'll realize is maybe you're doing a pull-up, right? And you're crushing it at the beginning of your cycle. You're not even realizing it. To ovulation, you're like, damn, I just hit a PR. Then you do that same workout like a week later, and suddenly you're not even able to get half of what you did. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And it's because of these changes. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And I think that's like also like as far as talking about progressive overload or hitting PRs, like that's why heavy is so relative because like it's even relative to each person, but then even within yourself, one week your heavy is going to be a lot heavier than your heavy at the next week when let's say you're in, that luteal phase or something, or when you're, not having as much energy, then your heavies might be lighter and that's okay. It's still
Mm,
is like it's still gonna feel heavy to you.
love that. Yeah. And obviously there's always things you can look at. Did we sleep the night before?
Yeah.
Did we have a lower carbohydrate day? There's obviously things that we can, factor in, but I'm gonna kind of go on a tangent here for just a second.
Yeah.
Cycle syncing has been really hot the last few years, and I love it, but I also hate it for a lot of people because just because you're having these moments doesn't mean you necessarily don't want to train heavy during this
Yes.
time. And it gets a bad rap because let's say your menstruation, you know, typically it's going to be a calmer time, focusing on more restorative things like yoga and Pilates. You're not going to really want to hit like some like PRs during this time. But then sometimes people are like, well, cycle syncing person said that I shouldn't work out during this time and only do band workouts. So I'm not going to work out during this time because I want to work on hormone balance. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's not necessarily true, right? Like everybody's a little different. But you're not going to feel super fantastic during especially the 1-2 days, right? When you're on your period. Now, as estrogen starts to rise and your testosterone starts to rise at the beginning half of that phase, you're going to start feeling more energized. This is a really good time for you to start crushing your workouts. If you're doing HIIT training, I will say if you have an extreme hormone balance, HIIT training shouldn't be in your repertoire, but
Yeah.
pretty good, pretty balanced. This is a great time to focus on HIIT, great time to increase volume, increase, trying to hit your PR, boot camp style workouts. Great time for this. You can obviously still be focusing on restorative movement during this time too. That's what
Yep.
feels good for you, right? Um, then once we start getting kind of in this ovulation phase, um, go for your PR.
Yeah.
Go hit it. Also just like go have sex.
Yeah. I was gonna say, go get on top of the world, go climb the Eiffel Tower.
Go climb your husband, whatever.
Yeah.
But like just
Like a
saying.
tree.
Now if you're not wanting children, this is your most fertile phase. This is where you get pregnant. So my little
Yeah, true.
but that's a natural, like incredible evolutionary thing, right? That happens. Like that is there for a reason, right? But
Yes.
anyways, this is a great time to kind of do those kind of movements.
Yes, it's a powerful, powerful time. No,
And
and I have to say really quick too, I'm really glad you went down the tangent of like love-hate relationship with the cycle syncing thing because again, I think it's so person dependent. And like that's one thing that I've had the same. I like love that you went there because I think the same way of it doesn't have to be just yoga or whatever. Like, and you can do more restorative work during your power phases too, as well as like you could still strength train during your restorative, little just like pull back some. Like it doesn't have to be. I think a lot of people have taken it to the extreme of I can't work out. I can only like, stretch or something during this phase, you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
it is a almost a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's why also coaching is so important because we as coaches can see more of this bird's eye view of what is going on and what might feel best for you, and kind of work within your body and your phase because also not everybody's cycle looks like this. This is a more normal cycle, but everybody's not normal. you know
Yep.
some people don't even know if they're ovulating or if or how long their ovulation is, so in some people's luteal phase is a lot longer. So it's kind of something to consider. Because your follicular phase should be about 7 to 10 days, your ovulation about 3 or 4, your luteal about 10 to 16 days, just kind of, it varies, but that's based off of, a 28-day, 30-day cycle.
Yeah.
But, in this luteal phase, so the second half of your cycle, your progesterone, as I mentioned, is going to start to rise. And this is important because you're going to naturally feel more tired. You're going to feel more bloated. You're going to feel a little bit like maybe weakier. I will say if you start having extreme fatigue, anger, mood issues, like that could be something a little bit more than just normal PMS. Might be in this like kind of PMDD state, but but that is normal, right? Like people get really, especially again, I'm talking a little more like these high achieving, powerful women that are like, go, go, go all the time, who don't listen to their body's natural response. They're like, why the hell do I feel so like crap?
Yeah.
And, so as this progesterone starts to rise, you want to focus a little bit more on restorative movement during this time. It doesn't mean you can just do bands and restorative movement, but it means taking longer rest breaks. This is a great time to deload. If you're going to be doing a deload week. It's a great time to focus a little bit more on maybe higher reps, lower weights, right? Don't be trying to crush some PRs, guys, in the luteal phase. I'm not saying you can't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, it might not be the time to do it.
Would you also explain, just for anyone who may not be familiar with a deload phase or deload week, what that is?
Yeah, you just pretty much you're taking volume off the body to just give it a break, de-stress. And so this could be something like dropping volume down, dropping weight down. It could also mean you just take the whole freaking week off. People don't always like that if you're so used to a training routine. They don't want to completely take off. But I will tell you, when you do a good deload week, which I don't know how often you program deloads, every 4 to 6 weeks, for some people 12 weeks. Some people, depending on training volume, never really have a deload because they just naturally are like God, like not training every few weeks.
Yeah. That happens a good bit, I feel like. It's a natural, unlike unplanned deload week.
I was just talking to a client and she was like, deload, like what is that? I was like, well, we haven't had to talk about it because every 3 weeks you're gone and you don't work out, which is fine, but like you naturally just have a deload week. But if you do this, it's going to not only be good for your cortisol and your stress response, but I guarantee you will come back stronger too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your body needs rest. Needs rest.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect time to do it in your luteal phase. Don't get mad at yourself if you're pushing, and you're not seeing progress in the gym. You're getting higher sugar cravings. You're getting really tired. Like that's your body's warning signs, pulling up red flags. Listen to it. A woman's intuition is very interesting, and we have overridden this over the years with stress and overwork. And when you understand and become a little bit more in tune with your body, just being aware of these phases, right? It's really interesting. You start listening more to what your body's trying to tell you, and guess what? You probably start seeing your weight fall off a little bit more. You start feeling more energized. You start feeling those natural, sex drive cues. I say that because so many women struggle with libido. Nobody wants to talk about it. Like it's okay to talk about, and yeah, so.
Well, and I think that's one thing too, like it takes away so much of the frustration when, like, even what you said at the beginning, it's like our phases, our bodies run on a 28-day hormone cycle versus a man who's a 24-hour hormone cycle, like very, very different. And so like one, you might see better weight loss and things like that, but then also just like less frustration when you know your body better and when you understand like actually what it's doing throughout the month versus just getting frustrated that it's not like cooperating for you.
Yes.
Yes.
So
So climb your husband, climb that mountain on around ovulation,
yes.
deload recovery during our luteal phase. Um, any other recommendations like training wise on
Um, I think
cycle syncing?
something that's important to kind of note is you're actually going to recover better in the beginning part of your phase versus the last part of your phase. So that's another thing too. If you are wanting to, obviously keep strength training, if that's in your repertoire at the beginning or at the second half of your cycle, You just might feel like recovery is just a little bit less optimal. That's okay. Like that's normal. You shouldn't be so bad to where you're like so sore, not recovering at all. That could be a whole nother issue going on. But you're just naturally going to feel it's a little bit difficult to recover. So you might need a little bit longer rest days, as I said, rest breaks even during your workouts. But yeah, I think that's really kind of
Sweet.
it.
Well, I
Yeah.
can say like I know as like a driven woman, I'm like I get FOMO with not, it's like I always want to push myself, but like I can speak from experience, like even personally, taking a deload week, I usually come back stronger and better for it the week after. Like just kind of dialing back. Like a lot of times for me, I'm just like, okay, let me just pull back to 75% instead of my normal like gung ho 100%, trying to kick my own butt in this workout. I'm still gonna show up. I'm still gonna do like similar workouts. I'm just dialing back that intensity. And then like the next week, I'm able to come back and maybe push past a PR or just come back with more intensity. So
For
that's
sure.
helped so much.
I will say when you stop training at 100% 24/7, you will see more results. 100%. This is such a hard thing for women to grasp
Yeah.
because they're used to going, this all or nothing mindset all the time. And it's like, when I'm on it, I'm on it and I'm crushing it. And like, then you get burnt out and,
Yeah.
and then you do nothing. Or you get frustrated at yourself, which isn't advantageous anyways. And then you do nothing. But it's just when you start to understand that it's okay to pull back, pulling back, as you mentioned, it's not doing nothing. It's just pulling back to 75% rather than 100. You will see better gains. You will see better sleep because your cortisol is probably not going to be jacked up so high.
Yeah.
You're going to notice better bloating because you're probably not so stressed out. Like bloating constantly, again, could be a whole hour long conversation, but a lot of it is just your body's stressed out and your cortisol is so high. And so, you'll probably notice less bloating. You'll notice less brain fog probably because your body's just working more optimally. It's not so stressed all the time, right? And so it's pretty amazing that all these symptoms that we hear probably every day, right? I'm
Yeah.
experiencing fog, bloating, fatigue, all this stuff. It's like, okay, can we just taper back training and listen to your body a little bit more? And, maybe even do this simple swap. Sometimes it's more complicated. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we're doing gut protocols and hormone protocols, but sometimes it's literally just like stress less. And
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like what you said, like it's so hard for women to do because I think a lot of times they feel like they're going backwards or they're not pushing hard enough for results. And so it feels like it's the faster lane to just push all the time. But I'm like, then when you burn out and you have to take weeks off because you're just like so fatigued and so drained or sore, tired, whatever, if you would have just taken that 1 week, you would have been further along versus like literally going until you have to take a break and burn out.
I'm gonna okay, talk about this for a hot second. So I just had a conversation with another client about this, and it was I really stressed a deload week. We're going through a little bit more of a protocol, like a, a hormone kind of flush protocol, but it's like we have to deload. We have to take, and I wanted this to be no workouts, strength workouts. I wanted it to just be walking, which walking is my favorite type of workout, guys. It is the best thing for metabolism and fat loss. Not straight train, but like don't underestimate the power of walking,
Yeah.
even if you feel like it's not
Yes.
burning as many calories. Okay.
Oh,
Um,
so good.
and I get this all the time. I can't do that. That's my stress relief. I can't not work out because that's where I release my stress. I'm like, that's cortisol speaking here. I mean, like that we have to figure out other ways for your body to experience that because that's keeping you in this mega, you know, um, nervous system dysregulated state. um,
Yes.
and that's the problem we see a lot, right? Is it's like, I'm not seeing results, I must push harder. And then it's actually the opposite, and it's very, very difficult to understand and to be bought into this process that sometimes less is more. Sometimes.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Less is more sometimes. It's so
yeah.
true. What would you say like for as far as the nutrition side of things? Are there any like kind of high level things you would recommend as far as cycle syncing and being supportive of your cycle nutrition wise?
Yeah. So one thing to understand is kind of fascinating actually is your metabolism speeds up a little in the second part of your cycle, and it's a little slower at the beginning. So you're probably hungrier in the second half of your cycle, right? Yeah. Which is a natural physiological response. You should be a little bit hungrier. Now, you want to make sure you're really balancing your blood sugar in the second half of your cycle, because you actually become a little bit more insulin resistant in the second half of your cycle and more insulin sensitive in the first half of your cycle. And so in the first half, you can actually crush a little bit more carbs, and your body's just going to burn them a little more effectively, which is also great because that's the time you're going to need it the most for your workouts anyways.
Yeah.
So, you know, people tend to feel a little bit better on a little bit of a higher carbohydrate and then a little bit of a lower carbohydrate in the second half of the cycle. Again, I will say with the nutrition, it really is very different for everybody. But if you're truly doing like a cycle syncing, this could be something that works for you. You really do want to focus on fiber at the beginning half. Like, right, we still don't want to like completely whack our insulin response. Like, you're like, oh, cool, I can just crush some donuts and nothing else the rest of the day. Like, we still want to focus on, you know, fiber because we want to support healthy detoxification. And fiber is a really great way to help that. Still have healthy amounts of fats and proteins. Second half, pulling back carbohydrates can actually be really helpful. Now, this doesn't mean get rid of them, because your cravings are probably going to skyrocket going into your period if you just completely cut them. But sometimes people feel better pulling back a little bit on that second half of the cycle. Interesting, right?
And what would you say, like, as far as carbs, and because yeah, like everyone's like that's when the carb cravings come in. So to even like, and as far as like being supportive of progesterone during that part of the cycle, what would you say or recommend?
So on a basic level, make sure you're balancing your blood sugar, right? Like, you
Yeah.
have to be balancing your protein, your fats, and your carbohydrates, especially going into that second half of the cycle. Like, but a lot of times, magnesium, increasing magnesium in the second half of your cycle can help a lot with cravings and progesterone, along with a little bit more B-rich foods, to kind of support that progesterone as well. And sometimes you can do it through food. You can increase a little bit of magnesium supplementation, which also helps with cramping. But guess what's really high in magnesium, guys? Chocolate.
Chocolate. Wonder
So,
why you want chocolate.
right? I remember first learning that many, many years ago, and I was like, what? Like, you know, it's just such a mind-blowing thing. I was like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense.
Yes.
And, you know, so I think increasing those kinds of foods, maybe supplementation, can be really helpful in that second half. And then when you start bleeding, more iron-rich foods, zinc-rich foods. Don't go out supplementing. Like, I hate when people are like, oh yeah, iron, zinc, like, and then just start popping supplements, because then you can override that balance and have too much supplementation. But something to kind of note when you're having like iron-rich foods, right? Especially if you're a little bit of a heavier bleeder. If you're too heavy of bleeding, that's a hormone issue too. So like, we got to balance that.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be like passing super big clots and bleeding so heavy, but you're naturally bleeding or losing blood. And so pairing vitamin C rich foods with iron rich foods is going to help the absorption of those foods better. And that's really important to note too. If you're, you know, so often, God, it seems like everybody nowadays goes to their doctor and the doctor's like, take iron and vitamin D.
Hmm. Yeah.
You really need is probably to increase vitamin C and increase magnesium, actually, to help with the vitamin D and help with the absorption of the iron.
Well, and that's where, because like, vitamins and minerals working synergistically with each other. That's why it's like, yeah, sometimes you might need a dedicated supplement, but like you need to look at what other minerals and vitamins you're having around with that work with it and help it get absorbed better. And that's why going, like you said, the whole foods approach first is a really smart idea, because nature is so smart and it's probably pairing those things together with a lot of the things you're like eating. Like I just think of like beef liver or like, animal products and things like that. Like a lot of the vitamins and minerals that you're getting are already paired together in the way that you need them.
That's interesting. It's so fascinating learning about this stuff. I hope people listening are like, this is so cool too.
Okay, yeah. But it's I mean, that's just like, I don't know. Like, I think everyone does just like, okay, what am I deficient in? Let me get that one supplement. And it's not necessarily that that's a bad choice. It's just like, it's still like, what does your whole food diet look like to be supportive of
And
that
it's just
supplement?
such a synergy, right? Like if you take too much magnesium, it's going to throw some other minerals, off. And like for all of our clients, they get what's called hair tissue mineral analysis. And what's always interesting is let's say magnesium is like, oh, if my magnesium is really high, do I need to be taking less magnesium? No, it's what's the ratio to potassium and sodium and like all these other things. It's more of a ratio, not like they don't work. Um, they work synergistically, right? They don't work just by themselves. So,
Yeah.
I think that's always an important thing to understand. Um, um,
So good. So
but
good. I know we
um,
could go down that whole rabbit hole.
I
Any
know.
other,
But
any other nutrition advice that you would give for cycle syncing?
so at the when you're menstruating, you're going to feel a little colder sometimes. So actually more warming foods is really helpful during this time
Mm,
versus like when you're ovulating, your temperature naturally spikes. If it's not spiking, you're probably not ovulating. Which by the way, if you guys want to get pregnant, make sure that, see that spike. If you don't want to get pregnant, when you see that spike, use protection.
yeah.
But so having more cooling foods during that ovulatory phase can actually be kind of helpful. Um, and also just foods to help balance this spike in estrogen levels. Also, really watch your alcohol. Always watch your alcohol if
Mm,
you have a hormone balance, but during this phase, you want to focus on detoxification, you want to focus on liver support. And so it doesn't matter if you're eating whole foods all the time, if you're drinking alcohol all the time, and
yes.
because it's going to stress out your liver. And even if it's just one drink, it can still impact that. Again, I'm not saying don't drink, but be mindful of it, right? Same with caffeine. Caffeine can really mess with estrogen levels too. So you want to make sure that you're, not having too much caffeine during this phase. Um, in the second half of your phase, um, actually, this is interesting. Is like you're naturally going to probably feel a little bit more anxious, a little bit sadder, right? Um, so actually having foods that help with serotonin and dopamine response and root
Mm,
vegetables are really good for this.
mm,
And just complex carbohydrates, things like sweet potatoes, turnips, carrots, are really great. I love raw carrots at the beginning half of the cycle too. It helps with estrogen detoxification and fiber. I mentioned magnesium, magnesium rich foods like spinach, dark chocolate. Yes, you can have the dark chocolate during this time. It's really good for you.
I was
Um,
going to ask you about the estrogen, like detoxification and carrots being a good one. And then even like what you said, about alcohol. Cause like, I feel like so many women struggle with estrogen dominant symptoms. And so any other advice you would give there? Cause like alcohol being a culprit for some of that, needing
yeah,
estrogen detoxification. Carrots are great.
they're good. Raw carrot salad with some vinegar is really helpful. I think a lot of it comes down to all of this is great. And I think if you listen to the other podcast episode, I do a good job at this, hopefully.
You did a
But
great job.
it's like, it's sometimes not even about all of this fancy stuff. It's about eliminating stressors in your life, which stressors can be working out and pairing this, working out with your cycle can help. It's aiding detoxification pathways, something as simple as, sweating, walking, getting lymphatic drainage, dry brushing, um, but eliminating um, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Toxins pretty much in your
Mm,
environment that are increasing estrogen dominance, things like plastics, parabens, phytolates, BPAs, things like that, that really drive inflammation, drive that estrogen dominance, and working on liver support. And that liver support, like if your liver is so clogged and just congested, like most people's are, your body's going to continue circulating estrogen and not detoxifying it. And it doesn't have to be through a fancy detox, right? It can be
mm-hmm.
more water. It can be, you can add in liver supporting foods like beets and dandelion greens and, um, different foods to help support that. But we want to flush that out. I will tell you guys, if you're not pooping, every day, you're gonna have estrogen dominance because guess how you eliminate excess estrogen through your stool? Like
Through the poop.
so no, don't tell me that this has been normal because my whole life I've only pooped twice a week and that's just the way I am. Okay, we gotta fix it.
Mhm.
Because if
I
you're
was
not,
just talking with a woman the other day or this week who we were doing a nutrition consult and she was like put down, I asked them about their bowel movements
yeah,
and what that looks like and she and bloating and whatever and she said that she was like, "Oh, she said that bowel movements were good." She was like, "Yeah, all good there." And then she was like, "I go a couple times a week." And I was like, "That's not all good there."
no, people don't know what normal is.
Yeah.
And I know talking to people, sometimes I'm like, oh, you're not pooping every day. They're like, I should be pooping two times, like every day. Actually, you should be pooping 2 to 3 times a day. Technically, some people tell you that you're still constipated if you're only going once a day versus twice. So that is so key, and why I mentioned just briefly about fiber, especially in the first half of your cycle, but fiber all the time is fiber helps a healthy gut microbiome, right? Especially during your cycle, you should always be focusing on gut health, but introducing more pre and probiotic foods in the second half of the cycle can really help too. But if you're not taking care of your gut health, your hormones are going to be out of whack. And this is, oh God, I could go on so many tangents, but like hormones aren't the root cause for a lot of people. A lot of times it's cortisol imbalance and it's gut health. And if those two are out of whack, your hormones are going to be out of whack. And
Mm,
so, so many people try the cycle syncing route, or maybe they're doing like seed cycling, or maybe they're doing, all of this stuff, and then they're still not feeling like better. It's because probably their gut health and cortisol are out of whack, right? Um,
yeah.
but
But
yeah,
would you say like the goal of cycle syncing is like to work with your body's just natural rhythms of your menstrual cycle, like with main benefits being like maybe improved PMS symptoms, better energy, better mental focus. Like
all of
that's the
those.
goal with cycle syncing, right?
Yeah, I think it's just to support your body a little more synergistically, right? You don't want to get too much into it. It's like I can only have B-rich foods in the second half of my cycle and have but it's to support those natural ebbs and flows. There's ways to support your estrogen. There's ways to support your progesterone. There's ways to make sure it doesn't rise too much, and so, ultimately it does come down to a lot of whole foods, a lot of proteins, a lot of like, whole grains and fruits and vegetables, right? So yeah, everything.
What changes have you noticed personally? Like I'd be curious for your clients too, but more interested in even for yourself. Like, and I know we've talked a good bit before recording and starting this episode and talking about some of your immune system and health stuff that you deal with, but even whether it's related to that or just like as a female, like what changes have you noticed yourself when applying like cycle syncing to yourself?
Okay. So great question.
Okay.
One, I am 8 months postpartum and don't have a cycle right now. So, and I have not done cycle syncing for 2 years because I've been pregnant. Um, but, but, yeah, I do have an autoimmune disease. I have ankylosing spondylitis. So this doesn't necessarily help with that. I mean, Whole Foods is always going to help with that. When I learned about this and when I implemented it, I think the biggest change personally for me was I felt more at peace with my body.
Mm,
Um, I felt less frustrated in my body because I understood these ebbs and flows. I understood a little bit more ahead of time because I'm such a planner. So I was like, I would plan certain things during the first half of my cycle and ovulation phase, knowing I was going to feel better. And then when it gets so frustrated when I didn't feel that good on my second half,
yes. So
I
good.
felt less highs and lows. I felt more balanced, which was a big thing too. Like you shouldn't feel like I'm amazing and then I'm horrible. Like we should feel better. We should feel maybe a little more tired, but not these huge ebbs and flows, right? We should
Mm,
still be finding this balance. Again, if you're on birth control, it's like the whole time. I remember coming off birth control and being like, oh my God, I feel I feel so much better. But two, I feel these changes that I've
yeah.
never felt before. And I felt more in tune with my body. So I think, people take that power away from just again that intuition and how we feel like and how much that can just improve overall quality of life, right? Um,
Mm,
and I will say I'm gonna take it back too. It's like I felt a sex drive again. And that was really cool because I didn't even know I thought I was a woman And
Mm.
I never had that. But then I realized, wow, I feel stronger and I feel, I have that sex drive again going into ovulation. And then when I was in the second half, it was okay to not feel that drive the same way.
Yeah.
It's normal too, right? Um, and so yeah, I think just more balance was the biggest thing that I noticed. I had always had pretty good energy too, right? Like I felt a little bit better with my energy, but that went a lot deeper into more systemic inflammation and brain fog and stuff like that. But
Yes.
it's
I
always
know one of my friends who came off of when she came off birth control, her libido was one of like the main improvements. When I was on it, I didn't seem to have any issue with that
yeah.
then either. But yeah, I was like, then or now we could. But she was like, oh my gosh, Megan, like just I mean she was like, I literally went from not wanting to be with my husband to like I actually have a sex drive again. This is crazy. Like
Birth
that's
control can actually change who you're attracted to as well, which is fascinating.
so
Um,
fascinating.
like when people come off birth control, for better or for worse, sometimes they're
Yeah. Yeah.
with a partner and sometimes they're less attracted to their partner. And it's like who you pick when you're on the pill versus off is also different. It's oh, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Not
Uh,
specialty, to be honest, but it is really interesting. But yeah, getting off and feeling those things again is really important. If you're not, then there's some sort of imbalance you need to address. You know what I mean? Like if you're feeling, for example, way more tired and like you're unable to work out during ovulation phase, which some people do feel, that's a sign of an imbalance. If you're suddenly getting these huge spikes in energy in the second half, which most people don't, that's probably not, right? Like if you're feeling really terrible all the time and not having this like, raise in progesterone, or I'm sorry, in estrogen and testosterone with the first half, you have to work with that. But those are
yeah.
that something could be off, and women have been programmed to feel how they feel on birth control, which is like this,
Mm.
and so they're used to that. And when they maybe get off birth control, maybe they're not on birth control and they don't
And for
have.
people listening that can't see your hand, she just did her hands straight
All
apart.
right. I like to talk with my hands.
Yeah. She
I'm
like, so
like
on birth control, you're very like, what's the word?
flatlined.
Flatline. Yeah. Flatline.
Thank you. I do that. I do so many lives and not, um, so yeah, I think they don't know that's how they should feel, right? And then when they start feeling that, it's like, oh wow, this is awesome. But they don't think anything's wrong because they've never felt that way, right? Um,
Mm.
and that's I think across the board for a lot of our clients, right? Like with pooping, it's like I didn't realize anything was wrong until I went to the bathroom every day and feel so much better. I didn't realize I was dealing with so much bloating until it was gone. I didn't realize how much fog I had on my brain until it was gone. So that's I think always so interesting is people don't know how bad they necessarily feel until they feel better.
So good. So, so good. This has been so helpful and so wonderful. I hope everyone listening has gotten a bunch of little nuggets out of this. Is there anything else that you would want to add about cycle syncing? I think we
uh,
touched on.
yeah, I don't want to go any down down more rabbit hole. I just hope it's helpful. As I said, I think this is unique for everybody.
Yes.
This is the Bible, but maybe start incorporating one or two things into your day. And I hope this really just brings awareness more than anything.
Yes.
Because I think bringing that awareness is what can, ultimately help you feel better and more in tune with your body. And once you feel that, you'll just feel better. So.
Yes. And I think that's such a good point and like way to wrap it up is like, because I think a lot of people could listen to this and go stress out about, am I cycle syncing quote unquote correctly? And I'm like, don't stress about it. Just do one little thing. Just listen to your body. It's the awareness of it. It's
Mhm.
like, okay, do your best to cycle sync in ways, but like, don't go out there and stress. Am I cycle syncing or not? Like,
Yeah, it's just a tool. And it's just one tool in your tool belt. And if it works for you, awesome. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Like,
that's okay too. Awesome. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for your time today. This has been wonderful. You always bring all the value bombs and so much knowledge, and we just appreciate you so much. I know last time we talked, you were rebranding.
yeah.
So, yeah. So, where can everyone find you? What's the best way to reach you?
Yeah. Well, my Instagram, Shannon.Salge, Salge. And my Instagram or my business name is The Wellness Paradigm. And There, my Facebook group. I love doing like free lives in there. So my Facebook group's the Holistic Women's and Fitness Community. And if you have any questions on this, definitely let me know. You can DM me or Megan, and hopefully it's helpful.
Yes, perfect. And I'll add all that in the show notes for you guys. So don't worry. You can just scroll down, look at the show notes, find her info. Shannon, thank you so much for your time.